Hey everyone, it's me. Welcome back to this channel on narcissism. And today we're going to take on a question that comes from a viewer who asks, as someone whose parents had abusive relationships with each other and with their children, what are some ways that I can break the cycle of abuse in my family? This is actually an excellent question and one that I think many people who grew up in narcissistic or abusive or dysfunctional families wrestle with. First of all, just because you grew up in a narcissistic, abusive, or dysfunctional family doesn't mean that you are doomed to repeat that pattern. That's simply not true. You do have a choice. But it does mean that you have to work at it. You have to be awake to it, and you have to be willing to do things that are very uncomfortable. So the first step really is becoming aware of what your entitlement issues are, what your patterns are, what your triggers are, and where you're showing up in ways that are not helpful. The second thing is to really get clear on what healthy relationships look like. And you may not have had the opportunity to model what healthy relationships look like, because if your parents were narcissistic, they weren't exhibiting them. So you need to get that information from somewhere else, whether it's a book or a podcast or a video, whatever it is. You really have to get clear on what are the characteristics of a healthy relationship, both in terms of how you treat another person and how you expect to be treated. The third thing is to really start setting boundaries around what you will and will not accept from other people. And this is really hard for people who grew up in narcissistic families because they often have a parent or parents who are either completely enmeshed with no boundaries or very rigid and authoritarian, and there is no give and take. So learning how to set boundaries is a really key skill. And the fourth piece of this is to be willing to walk away from relationships that are not healthy. And this is the piece that most people struggle with the most because it means giving up the only family that you've ever had, or giving up long-term friendships that may not be good for you. But if you don't do it, then you are continuing to feed the generational pattern of dysfunction. So it's really hard work. It takes a lot of courage, but it's absolutely essential if you want to break the cycle. Now I'd love to hear from you. If any of you have any tips for folks who are trying to break this cycle, please feel free to drop them in the comments. Thanks again.